Yokes.
Talking about Yokes.
Yep. Yay, we're on.
Yay! We love Yokes. Like really Yokes.
All right.
Hi.
Strongma'am TV episode number a lot. Five and 10-ish. I don't think we're at 12 yet.
I think we might be. I think that might be 12. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Maybe. I don't know.
It's a lot.
I could be
That's a
wrong.
lot of footage.
Yeah, I know.
We have two goals today: not to let the battery run out, and
Yay.
to not make this an hour.
Also, yay for you.
We might even accomplish one or both of those tasks. So, hey, look, it's Gabby Hoffman,
Hi.
lightweight open competitor, and
This is Jason Strupp, also lightweight men's open competitor.
I sounded more enthusiastic.
This is Jason Strupp with his sweet curly feet and short shorts.
Gabby told me that there were some complaints that my shorts were too long in some of the other videos, so we're gonna fix that today.
Yeah, we're having a contest to see who has shorter shorts.
We're gonna fix the hell out of it.
Jason's winning.
Mine aren't even spandex, you know? Like, well, what if?
Oh, it's not.
We're off subject a little bit.
All right.
So yokes are things.
Is that our favorite?
Gabby's favorite.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, I would say like maybe almost half the shows usually have yokes.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's a really common event. And it's something that, it's a specific piece of equipment, you know? It's kind of like a log. If you don't have it, you're not training exactly how it's really like, and you might be at a little bit of a disadvantage. So I thought, in light of this, like you may have a yoke, but your yoke may be different than other people's yokes. I think it's important to address the fact that not all yokes are the same.
Great.
And if you have no yoke, we'll maybe discuss that briefly, but I think that there's other videos that are like how do you simulate yoke training and stuff like that. That's like a different topic. And one, to be honest, as like a coach, I'm not really all that interested in because one, buy a yoke. Two, the longer that you're trying to kind of like figure out how to like replicate things, the longer you're kind of just giving up training time to people that are just willing to go to a strongman gym that has a yoke. I know that's not an option for everyone, but like, again, that's kind of a different subject.
Yeah.
Like how to fake a yoke. We're gonna just assume you got access to a yoke, and we're gonna teach you some things about how to train with it.
Yeah.
First things first. The uprights could be any number of heights. They're usually pretty close to eye level on an average sized guy. So maybe they're a little taller than the average sized girl, maybe they're a little shorter, but you will see occasionally. We have a road right here. These are pretty affordable. You can usually get great deals on shipping. Customer service at the road is really rad. If you're at a CrossFit gym, you'll very likely to see these because they make a lot of CrossFit equipment. They make several different sizes and shapes of yoke. The tubing can be a different size, and it can be a different height. And the cross members can be attached in slightly different ways. This is their sort of generic, like wide one. Yeah, like the cheap one. It's like $500. Yeah. It's also kind of cool because if you're like working out in a garage setting and you want like one thing, this thing can be a squat stand. It can be a bench press or other pressing station. You can push it around like a sled. You can drag it, and you can use it as a yoke. Get it low enough, like you can do zercher carries. You can do stand over bar.
Pretty multi-purpose.
Yeah,
Pretty awesome.
It's a one-stop shop. Like again, if you're that person who's going to be in the garage and you can only have so much space or only so much cash to buy stuff, this would be a really good investment. But anyways, this is a 3-inch tube, so it's a little bigger than an axle, which is a 2-inch tube. You will occasionally see a 4-inch tube out there. Basically, the difference in tube size, as it gets bigger, the specific pressure on a small point gets lessened. But at the same time, it gets harder and harder to keep on your back because it's sort of like the larger it goes, the further away it gets from you. So a 4-inch tube on a really large guy might be great. It might feel more comfortable with heavy weights. But for a smaller woman, a 4-inch tube is probably just going to slide off the back a lot. It's going to be very difficult to deal with. A 2-inch tube might be an ideal fit for some of the lightweight women. But again, like with 1,000 pounds on it, it might be kind of too much pressure for some of the heavyweight guys, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else? There's different types of yokes, like as far as the way they're assembled. This has got 2 points of connection here and 2 to 3 points of connection here. So the rogue yoke is a very stable yoke. A lot of other yokes will only have 1 point of connection up here and maybe 1 or 2 down here. And that makes them loose. They shimmy and rattle more, which makes them less stable when you're moving, and it makes it harder to control. And I think that's another good training thing. I've learned kind of from like hitting the road and like going to other gyms and training on their yokes. Whatever your max is on your yoke, it's not the same on somebody else's.
Definitely not.
The Rogue is an ego pleaser because it's so tight, so stable, that you can do a lot more weight on a very steady yoke like this. When you get onto a loose yoke, your max is going to come down some. And that can be humbling when you're like, oh, I'm supposed to do 400 today, and you put 400 on somebody else's yoke and it crushes your soul. That's, you know, it's tough.
Yeah.
I have seen once or twice, and it was mostly for shits and giggles more than anything else like that. Except one time it was at Worlds in China, a chain yoke. So literally the weights are suspended on free moving chains. That's obviously going to lower your backs a little bit. But I have seen guys do that. You can get a loading pin like you would for a rolling thunder or something like that and put some weights at the end of the chain. The more weight, ironically, the more stable it's going to be. But at the same time, any weight swinging around on chains is incredibly unstable. It's very difficult.
That's what's up.
But people do it, and I do think that it maybe has some benefits as far as like, you know, increasing core stability. But it's more of a circus show than it is like a good way to train the yoke. What else? Like equipment wise, like I don't.
Height. So the taller the yoke is, the more unstable it is, the more it will swing. I've done contests with like crazy tall super yokes, and they are very difficult to manage if you're trying to run really fast. The shorter ones that only have like one point of protection, that would be like this height. They're not a lot nicer because you don't have anything up top sort of moving around. But those are usually smaller, so like Jason said, they're a little bit more loose. They don't feel quite as nice as something like a Rogue, which I think is a nice in between.
The tallest yoke I have seen is a Rogue.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, it's huge.
They do the same uprights that they do for like pull-up bars, so it goes like 10 or 11 feet up in the air. And they have heavy-duty hardware. God, we went to a show where like everything kind of just shut down because the yoke the height had to be changed from athlete to athlete, but it could only be done with like wrenches.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so that slowed things up. Great for stability and safety when you're doing like 1,000 pounds. But if you're watching this video, you're probably not yoking 1,000 pounds.
If you are, you shouldn't be watching this video.
Yeah. But anyways, so those are the main differences that you're going to see from one yoke to the next. When it comes to the actual technique, let's talk about I'm going to come around this way so you can see my back. But my personal belief is you want the yoke as up on top of you as you can possibly get it so that it's going down through you. If you try to low bar the yoke, the only way that that will possibly work is if you bend over. And if you're bending over in the yoke, your countdown clock before you fail has started. The longer you stay, the more upright, the longer you're going to last. So if you've got a greater distance or you've got a pick, repick, or I've never really seen a turn, I guess, with yoke, but like like a repick, you know, you could get 60 feet times 2. That's kind of a long yoke, and so if you're hunched over, you're not going to make it to the finish line. So that being said, Olympic high bar kind of position, very high up on top of the straps, very close to the neck, and I can even hold it a little bit by bringing my neck back into it. Okay, so I want it high up on the body so that it'll stay without a lot of help. The next piece is the arm position. Not every yoke is the same, so some yokes are so wide this way that you can't reach. Some girls are so narrow that they can't reach. Okay? If that is the case, that sucks, but you're going to go up into the bar. You're going to push up on it. Right? Like you wanted to, like behind the neck push presses the whole time. Okay?
Much more like what you would think of like behind neck push press, like a back squat grip.
Yeah.
And you occasionally you'll have a preferred way to train, but I've had to do it before where I've gotten to a place and I haven't tried their equipment and you have to switch your grip. So it might be a good idea to kind of at least play with it once or twice, maybe a couple more times if you can, to do that, because it does really change the dynamics if you're used to just gripping in one specific style.
But the ideal place to grip is going to be against the uprights, pushing out on them. For 2 reasons. One, let's say this isn't so tight. By pushing out, you'll kind of take the slack out of the equipment and tighten everything up. It's heavy, it's like 500 or 600 pounds, you know, you're not gonna be able to press, you know, 200 or 300 pounds per arm, but you're gonna create more tension and more pressure, and you're gonna reduce some of that sway. Also, while pressing against the bars this way, like pressing out like this, you can also lift the elbows, creating an artificial track that will give much more surface for the bar to rest on. Right? So lift the elbows, create more track. Okay?
This is always an issue for smaller women. Like, they don't have traps like Jason. So I usually in my setup will, this is too tall. I will almost like squeeze the traps together as hard as I can.
Look at it.
Push out and then get really solid and hit. My elbows really high, so if you're a smaller girl, you really need to get very, very, very tight, and you can accomplish that in a number of ways. Like that setup for you.
In order for that to work, though, you're going to need good scapular retraction. You're going to need good internal rotation of the shoulder, and those are. I think everybody should be working on scapular retraction, but not everybody really cares too much about internal rotation. But in order to really elevate and not like get your shoulder so tight that it's about to pop open, like you need to have some flexibility in the shoulder. Most folks know that they need external rotation, but no one ever trains internal rotation. That's really what you're doing when you're lifting those elbows. And it's kind of contraindicated if you're a big bench presser or something like that. So it's something to consider.
Those girls will be just kind of flexy enough to accomplish that just fine.
This is coming, I guess, from more like a bro kind of standpoint.
And if you have like shoulder mobility issues and you can't get into pushing into the uprights very nicely, you can definitely do the back squat style and be just fine. Again, not the ideal way to do it, but it's better than your shoulder popping out of socket or you like tearing your rotator. So
usually the yoke comes after the press, so I risk it.
Don't listen.
Just kidding. Okay, so okay, that's how to rack, how to grip. The next thing I think is really important is just initial foot placement. And I guess there the question is, what is the issue? Is the issue how heavy it is? Like this is your 1 rep max in the yoke, or is the issue speed? Like how fast can you start? Like, and most of the time, most yoke contests are decided by like a second or two or less. You know, the winner does it in 9 seconds, and the loser does it in 9.5 or 10. And then the other also rans do like 12 or 15 seconds. In that case, you need to, as fast of a start as possible. So at every show, they should be sizing you up and recording where your yoke height should be. If you want to move fast, you probably need a little extra height off the ground, i.e. the bar needs to be like a notch lower than normal, so that when you pick it, it clears the ground fully and you have no chance of accidentally swinging a little bit and skidding on the floor. This is a little less stable, but again, we're presuming this is light and you're going to go fast. The other thing that you want to do to add height is you want to pick with your heels under your hips like you walk, okay? And you want to be ready to walk immediately. Yep. Finally, you want to position your feet in such a way that the balance of your foot, you guys probably can't see where I am now, the balance of your foot is not, like the bar doesn't go through the middle of your foot, the bar goes through your forefoot, like the ball of your foot. Okay? What happens when you pick like this is the first thing that the yoke does is swing forward, right? Let's do a more exaggerated version of that. As you lift up, it's behind you and it comes forward, it swings. If you time things correctly, like you will chase the yoke in your first step and you can begin moving quickly right away.
This works well if you are really stable. If you have some wobbly stability problems, you might sort of keep tripping and tripping. So, but again, assuming that this is something that's light for you that you can do sort of any day of the week and you can run really fast, that's a really great method to go very, very quickly right from the start.
Now, if the opposite is true, and you're really praying you can just pick this thing and walk a couple feet and not get last, then you probably want to set your feet up in such a way that mimics your squat stance, okay? That's probably going to vary a little bit for everybody, but it's going to be wider than what I just described. Now, if you open your feet out wider, you get shorter, okay? So that's something to consider. Most folks aren't going to go so wide that it dramatically affects their height. nevertheless, something to consider, especially if you've got really long legs. That might, like, if you're a very tall, skinny person, like, your wide versus narrow might be more than a, like, you know, one hole to the next. But most of the time it's not. In this case, you're basically doing a really heavy, very partial range of motion squat, and then once the yoke is off the ground, you're bringing your feet under you and then beginning to walk. Those extra steps will cost you a half a second, maybe a second.
If you're not really tight and stable, it's going to cause you to lose it.
You can be a little shaky, and you're not going to, your first steps are necessarily going to be moving towards your own midline, and then starting to move forward very slowly. And the yoke is likely to sway left to right as you bring your foot left to right to come in. And it's going to be a slower start. But if it's necessary to get it off the ground, then you know, you do what it takes. If you're training like that very frequently, either you know you're new to the yoke and your max isn't very high, or you're signing up for some really tough contests, or maybe you're training too heavy too often. All right. Yeah. Let's see. Other technique stuff. I think this is a good kind of transition into equipment too, like talking about the belt, breathing, all this kind of jazz. Let's do this. Let's move this back a little bit again. Why don't you put your belt on and get under it? Or wait, no. You talk, I belt.
Okay. Jason's belting. So.
Wait. Now I'm belting.
Now he's belting. So for the yoke, we always recommend using a belt for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're putting an incredible amount of weight on your spine. So kind of logical that you want some safety considerations there. Number two, the yoke, whether you're going heavy or you're going light and fast, is really about stability and being able to be stable and move quickly. And in order to do that, you number one need to have some good midline stability, and number two, you need to be able to really brace properly, and the belt can be a huge advantage.
I remember when I first began training, it wasn't on one of these, and what I discovered was when I was not wearing a belt, I could do a little less weight, but I could do it much more stably. And then when I got the belt on, I had a belt like this, and I was like so hard and so stiff that I shook the yoke. And I actually had to train with the belt on for a while to learn how to use it. And if you wait, you know, you're like, oh, I'm a beginner, I don't need a belt. You're gonna just slow that whole process down. So start with your belt very, very early on. There's probably like a good argument for like off-season training, maybe doing like beltless yoke or something for. I don't know, but I mean, there's there's exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, serious yoke training is probably involving a belt. All right. So wear it high enough to not hurt your hips or impede your movement. Wear it low enough to not pop your ribs. You may see really big guys, pros, double up with their belts, get like a soft neoprene thing, or even a towel, and then go with like a harder belt over the top. That's really just to fill the spaces and create less space, more pressure. And I think you see this more commonly with the men who are like 231 and above, and it's because a lot of times the yokes are 700 pounds or more, and it gets pretty severe. Okay, so breathing.
Do it. Because I've seen people walk the yoke and really hold their breath and not breathe. So don't do that. Breathing's kind of important.
So, here's a counterpoint.
Yeah.
Like, if it's short enough to where you can finish without really taking that second breath, go for it. Yeah. Every time that you exhale, some of your height, some of your rigidity, some of your stability just dissipates. So I think if you aren't familiar with the Valsalva maneuver, Gabby will describe it now.
So what you're basically going to do, and I'll sort of talk about it in terms of like the belt. So most of you guys are probably familiar with like squatting and deadlifting heavy, where you brace against the belt. What you're really doing is creating a intra-abdominal pressure. Okay? And so the belt sort of serves not only as a space to create pressure, but also as like a feedback mechanism as well. So usually this involves taking in a really big breath and kind of forcing your abs out, and also forcing the air into your back as well. So really like diaphragmatic breathing here. And being really hard, really tight, like somebody's going to come and punch you in the stomach because you're an asshole. But with the belt, you can brace against that, and that's going to be necessary when you hit the yoke, for sure, especially if it's really heavy. When you start to get moving, you don't necessarily want to fully exhale like Jason said, because you're going to lose a lot of tension and a lot of your stability. So kind of the key is taking very short, quick and efficient breaths. So we'll demonstrate for us.
So completely tight fit. Midway. In terms of like inspiratory reserve, like tidal volume, whatever capacity, like I'm never exhaling more than 20, 30, 40% of my breath, and I'm never inhaling anymore either. So I'm retaining a certain amount of volume and pressure on the belt the entire time. But by the time I do like the 5th or 10th little like shallow puff breath, like I feel okay. I'm breathing again and I'm not like blacking out. You'll learn through trial and error if you want to how long you can hold your breath under this kind of pressure before you black out, and see if you can, you can run the yoke faster than that. Go for it. But if it's anything more than like 40 or 50 feet, it's probably long enough to where you're gonna have to breathe a little bit. My goal is basically, what I usually do is I get as much pressure as I can. I hold my breath as hard and as long as I can, and when it starts to get too much, like my face starts turning purple and like we start getting weird tunnel vision, then I start puffing. And that has carried me through many yoke contests.
It's pretty much the same approach I use. I try to hold my breath as hard as long as I can, and then we'll do some short breathing after that. And when you are sort of exhaling, one of the big pieces to that is not letting your chest and shoulders fall and not letting all of your tightness fall. I think that's a big thing. If you're unfamiliar with the yoke, that can happen fairly often. So like Jason said, very, very short little puffs of air.
I just want to come from this side and show like what you look like when you're puffed and pressured.
From the front or from the back?
From that side so they can see you from the front. So, Gabby's got a couple of movement goals here. One is controlling the pressure here in the breathing. 2 is keeping the elbows high. And 3, it's not tucking her chin so much like she did when she first started. As this starts to flex, right, the cervical spine, the rest is going to follow at some point or another. So that's what Gabby looks like. We've already seen what that looks like, but same idea. I'm coming in, creating pressure, trying to stay here for as long as possible. If it's heavy enough, what happens is the elbows drop and the chest and chin drop, and I start getting folded down. Right? When that process begins, it's kind of a matter of time before it puts the yoke back on the floor, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think a really good sort of cue that has helped sort of a lot of our athletes is I will make people stare at me when they do the yoke. I have to do this with one of our athletes pretty regularly. I tell her to stare at me straight in the face until she's done, so that she's not looking down like this. And as a result, she tends to breathe a little bit more often and it's a lot faster, and she's not so slumped over. So if you can, find a focus point, not always available at a contest. Find a person to be that focus point for you. And really think about keeping your shoulders up and your arch or your shelf very, very high. Always what I think is just elbows up. And really, if you're a girl, show off your boobs. It's kind of like the best cue I've had for that. One scapular attraction. Show off your boobs and keep your chest high.
So we've done a lot of kicks. Why don't we demonstrate the type of runs that we're doing in training? It just so happens I left this set up for my training day. When we talk about programming for the yoke, our basic approach. You want to grab it and just hang over there, or you can follow me during the whole set? Yeah. So I'm going to keep talking. We'll just grab it. It's going to get a little weird here.
Can I get a little Blair Witch project?
So this was kind of my light day. For example, though, I have an upcoming contest that's 50 feet, and I have a contest that's 50 feet, and I believe it's 550 pounds. And the heaviest yoke I've done in a contest so far is 650 pounds. So it's not a terribly heavy weight for me. And we probably spend most of our time in probably the 50 to 60% range. Do you want to go over there in front? So when I start, you can see my whole body, and then we can see kind of like the speed and the time it takes and stuff. Don't go too far away because I'll be hard to hear. But
No.
we don't train heavy very often. And I think that's one thing that we're going to talk about a lot in the programming section. But it's important to know, we do not train very heavy very often. Again, I placed, I want to say 3rd or 4th out of 9 or 10 athletes on a 650 pound yoke, and one of my first like level 2 shows ever as an open athlete. And here I am with 290 pounds. That's what I'm doing today, 290. And I consider it very productive training because I want to be fast. I don't know if you guys know this, but you win the yoke by going fast. So, what I usually do is set up a clock so I can measure my rest periods, but also so I kind of have a 3, 2, 1 go sort of thing, and I can practice reaction time as well. So Gabby's going to mimic that. Once she knows I'm like all set up, she'll give me like a 3, 2, 1. You can watch how I kick and how I move.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So fast.
But that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
That was probably 5 or 6 seconds. But the next time I'll do a yoke as part of a medley. So if it's not fast, it's fucking worthless. All right, so let's cut for now, and we'll. What? This is Strongma'am TV.
Oh, hey.
Let's cut for now, and we'll.
And we'll be back and talk about training stuff.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see you there.
I know.
I was just celebrating my Man Crush Monday. With,
It's Tuesday.
dude, Man Crush that large. It's gonna take some time.
Yeah, it's true. Looks like at least a 3-day span.
When your Man Crush is over 400 pounds, you'll understand.
Except it's not. No.
Okay.
Go. Anyway, we're talking more about the yoke.
Oh, humor.
Yeah.
Why do you allude me? So, we're talking about chop.
Oh,
Because,
you're
yeah,
talking about
we're gonna do some technique and equipment stuff that we can grab out. Like, you should just try to be the chop monster. Really, every time you train.
That's my motto in life, really.
But especially on the yoke, a lot of people will just take a block and put it on the bar, and that way, whatever it touches is chopped.
Or you can just have somebody chop your back.
That's a good way to make friends. Yeah, it's a good way to make friends.
It is.
So that was one thing.
Also wear a non-slippy shirt.
Don't wear this.
I actually like the yoke in a tank top. I like the least amount of like material, but I always train in a tank top. And I
Kathy doesn't really sweat as much as some people do.
Yeah.
And you may or may not have air conditioning in your gym. If any of those things are even remotely an issue, what you want is a shitty old cotton t-shirt. Like a Gildan, Hanes, Beefy, whatever. Because it's dry and catchy. It's honestly, it's good for like squatting, blah, blah, blah. But especially for the yoke, kind of handy.
Neat things.
Well, really, I haven't seen many things that are not allowed on a yoke. So like, and I've done it before where I've worn knee wraps, like powerlifting style knee wraps. And I used to find that very, very helpful because yokes are happy.
Yeah.
But it keeps you from bending your knees. The truth is, you're probably not going to bend your knees much in the actual moving part, so it's not really a huge issue. But keep in mind, like if it's of interest to you, you're not going to be disallowed from wearing knee or elbow sleeves, knee or elbow wraps, wrist straps, wrist wraps. Obviously a belt, any number of styles of belts, any number of belts.
Yes, you have lots of belts. You can really accessorize.
Yeah, really can. That's so you can do whatever the hell you want. So if you're the kind of person who even like say for like deadlifts or rack pulls or something like that, like really likes knee sleeves or even knee wraps, you'll probably be able to use them on the yoke. So knock yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as shoes go, you want something that you can move in comfortably, that's relatively flat and grippy, a little bit grippy. I like the Reebok Nanos. That's what I do all my moving events in.
I've never found grip to be important to you.
I try yoking on some shoe, yoking on Astro grip. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't.
Don't do that. Don't
do it.
see a contest with that. Run.
Low profile, I think, is like the big deal. Like, you're not going to be picking your feet up a lot, so you don't want to be wearing like cleats. And the lighter, flatter, smaller.
You don't know where weightlifting shoes are.
The lighter, flatter, smaller shoes are better. I have some of the Reebok TR lights, whatever, kind of like the Chuck replacement powerlifting shoes. They're really broad and flat, so when you add a lot of weight in your foot spreads, like, it fills the shoe. It works, and it has got a real hard edge on the outside, like this area. So there's not a lot of lateral spread. I think it's why it was really designed for like sumo deadlifting and stuff like that. But it feels great under a heavy yoke. It's low profile and flat enough. It's light enough. It's really comfortable movements. I'm really happy with those. But before those, I wore New Balance Minimus a lot. They're very small and you just get them real tight. And they work for a lot of stuff. I wore the hell out of those shoes for tire flips, for sled drags, for yoke, farmer's walk. I love them for everything. Okay, is that equipment enough?
I think so.
Yeah, gear for us. You talk a lot. I'm gonna go get your phone.
Okay.
You left our outline open, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. So we were going to cover some training considerations next. I think
It's so
it's just
wow.
I know.
Gabby has more friends than I do.
I don't necessarily say that, but
She has more talkative friends than I do.
maybe. So a couple of the things that we were going to talk about was sort of how to train the yoke frequently enough to improve, but not so heavy and hard that you are going to shake your spine out. Is really what we're talking about here. So we were recently at a seminar and somebody asked if, like, who trains the yoke every week when it's coming up for a contest, and Jason and I are the only people that raise their hands, much to the disdain, seemingly, of a bunch of people.
Of the presenter.
Of the presenter, and a couple of weird looks from other people, but we really do. When we have a contest with yoke, we really do train yoke at least once a week.
I think it's worth mentioning that while Gabby and I would say, like, the yoke is one of our best events each, it's still, relatively speaking, we're not like super advanced athletes, and we're also lightweights.
Yeah.
And the yokes that we're doing are typically, what are yours, like 350, 400?
Anywhere from like 350 to 450.
Yeah, so 350 to 450 is pretty common for Gabby, and I would say 550 or 600 is a kind of a middle of the road yoke for lightweight open 200. And so when we talk about the percentages that we're going to mention, you start doing the math, it's actually not super heavy. And that's the other thing, is I think that a lot of people view the yoke as a lot like the deadlift, very CNS intensive and very draining and difficult to recover from. And I think that can be very true with both of those movements if you train them a certain way. And principally, I think the main variable that affects recovery with those very heavy compound movements is intensity.
Yes.
If you're deadlifting heavy, then yeah, it's going to be hard to recover from. And if you're yoking heavy, it's going to be hard to recover from. So the first thing that we do when we have a yoke coming up for show is we look at the distance of the yoke, and we try to estimate what would be a decent, like, fast time. And then we test a max based on those two parameters, distance and time. So if the contest has 60 feet and it's, whatever weight, we try to guess, how fast people will be able to go, like who's going to win at what time. And it's speculation, but you can often look back at other shows or prior years in the same contest and get a good estimate of like about where the times fall. And I would say shortest yokes you've ever seen, maybe 40 or 50 feet? Yeah, and longest might be like 60 to 80 and then turn around and go back.
Yeah.
But the typical, most people like to see the medium for heavy.
60 to 75.
Yeah, 60 to 75 feet with like heavy yoke. And those winning times are usually what, like 11 to 14 seconds or something?
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty quick. It's a pretty short time frame. So we'll say, okay, we're gonna do the 60-foot run, and you've got to make it across the line, no drops, in under 12 seconds. And you know, we'll test up to the heaviest weight that we can do under those specific conditions. And once we've established that max for like training, that's what we run all of our numbers off of. Not the heaviest fucking thing you've ever picked at one time. Not your best show ever. You know, because like that's something that a lot of smart programmers for like weightlifters, like the Russians used to have sort of a competition max and a training max. And you know, if you've done a few shows as a strongman, you're gonna find that, oh yeah, well I kind of have that too. There's that one time where I rested all week and I was really amped up and there was like 100 people cheering for me and I deadlifted 500 pounds. But I can't go over 450 in the gym without shitting my spine out, right? So you have a training max and a competition max. And a lot of people, I think, always think of the yoke in terms of their competition max.
Yeah.
Or in another term that's just not relevant to what they're trying to do in their next show. So set some standards and don't exceed them. Okay. Percentages.
Percentages. So most of what we do is in sort of the 50 to 60% range, quite honestly. Like Jason said, it's going to be like, yeah, 55-0. I have a cold, so I sound good. So for me, if my max yoke is like 450 and I'm training at 50%, that means I'm not doing something that's crazy heavy. Like, that sounds pretty light.
225 would be less than your 1 rep max in your back squat.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what I'm running around with.
Yeah. And so it's not incredibly intensive and heavy, and it doesn't crush me every day. And this can sort of vary a little bit, and the intensity can move up and down based on what your show has. If it's a like max yoke event where you just go find your max yoke, then you're going to need to move some stuff up occasionally, more than if you're doing something for speed where you're just trying to run something that's light at a set weight
But
regularly.
with only 1 or 2 sort of like, I guess big show exceptions like Arnold or something, like usually the yoke is not for max.
Yeah, I've only seen it maybe twice this year.
So I mean, we can talk about how to train for like that, but
It's pretty rare.
Yeah. And what we're really talking about generically is like that 60 feet as fast as you can with moderate weight. Like that's what comes up all the time. Yeah, and so like what Gavin was describing, you know, we'll go through cycles of like 50, 60, 70%, you know, and maybe we'll nudge it up a little bit, but we don't retest that sort of paradigm except for maybe once every 3 to 6 training sessions. So like really 4 to 7.
Yeah.
So like the 7th training session, we might retest and see if we can do the exact same standards, just a little heavier. So if we've got 8 weeks to train for a show, not only are we training mostly 50 to 60%, like 2/3 or more of the time, but we're also not retesting the max, except for maybe once, like every 4 weeks. So, you know, like in the middle of a training period for a show, we might retest once, and then restart the whole thing over again with those new numbers.
Yeah, and again, this is within those distance and time parameters, so it may not be a true max effort yoke. What I can do in 12 seconds is greatly different than what I can do if you just sort of put something heavy on my back and let me stumble around for as long as possible.
Yeah.
It's a lot less taxing.
And I think that's worth noting. You know, we've all picked weights at one time or another, well in excess of like, you know, whatever our heaviest show has been. And so, like, in a manner of speaking, if I can pick, you know, 750 and I can walk 650 and I can run 550, but I'm training with 300, it gives you an idea of how heavy it really is relative to what we people are. And we're not going outside of that with that low stuff very often. So let's see here. Reps and sets, yeah.
Reps and sets.
Yeah. This is, we're going down the outline to make sure we don't leave anything out here. And I think this is something that maybe this is where we philosophically differ from others, and might be part of our early success. Is the yoke is first things first about stability. If you can't support the yoke, then you can't walk the yoke.
Right.
If you can't walk the yoke, you can't run the yoke. So you need to be able to like hold and stabilize the yoke, and then secondary to that, you need to be able to move it faster than everyone else. So the way to build stability is volume and or time under tension, which are, you know, kind of the same thing. Yeah. So if you're not getting a lot of sets and reps in, you know, you're not getting a lot of volume in, you're not really gonna build up that sort of stability, which is gonna be a precursor to moving it a foot,
Right.
and or moving it fast. So stability has to come first. If you want volume, then you have to give up intensity. Can't have both.
They're inversely proportional.
Wow. That's much more succinct.
Fancy.
All right, so but that's why we've come to this sort of necessary conclusion that you really can't train the yoke very heavy very often. But you can train the yoke often.
If you keep it light enough, if you focus on those parameters that we already discussed.
You want to build up the endurance and stability. Once you have that, you want to build up the speed, right? And like, there's very rarely is it like max weight is really the key factor. Yeah. Don't go heavy all the time.
Don't do it. At some point, I think the yoke sort of fell into that category with things like deadlifts, where it just became like sort of became a big circle jerk, where it was more of an ego stroking thing than anybody else, or than anything else. But like we're saying, you can't go heavy all the time. Temptation is there. It looks really cool. You feel really badass. It's not a weight and all that shit. But really, you're just gonna beat yourself into the ground, and you're maybe not gonna win. Pretty important if you're competing in a sport.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I feel as like as a coach who supervises a lot of different athletes, one of the most validating things that I can see from the way that we train is how often our weak athletes beat stronger athletes. Like we train smart, like and hard, but like really smart. And I think there's a way to extract a lot more performance out of your strength and that a lot of people are leaving on the table. With the heavy thing, these exercises that we've been talking about, the deadlift and yoke, are very CNS intensive above a certain relative intensity. Like you can, or maybe in absolute terms sometimes. Let's say, I can deadlift 1,000 pounds, so 500 is only 50%, but it's still 500 pounds. So when you get to a certain level, your training will necessarily change to some degree. But that's not to say that what got you there won't, continue to help you improve as well. But if you're deadlifting over 85%, you're probably not deadlifting very often, right? Like 85 to 100% is that sort of like upper limit sort of strength, power kind of intensity. That's very important to continue to gain 1 rep max strength. You have to train in that intensity range with some frequency to get stronger. But there's the rub. You can't do that very often without breaking, So you've got to find other ways of doing it. And people do a lot of different things with the deadlift, and that would be a great, program and fireside chat as well. Yeah. But when it comes to the yoke is a little different. It's very rarely a 1 rep max event. And I think the key contributing sort of attribute is stabilization, and for that you need endurance, and you need time under tension, and for that you need volume, and for that you need to forget about intensity.
Great. I mean, yoke is one of my better events for sure, but there are definitely girls who are much stronger than I am in all of these relevant lifts that you would list for something like the yoke, but I beat them because I'm more stable. I'm just better able to move weight with a lighter weight than they are because they walk all over the place. Because we train in this fashion where we really emphasize that time of retention to increase that and get faster.
The best way to get more time under tension is to get more sets in. It's not to make it heavier, it's not to go slower or to go longer distances, just do more sets. Right? Okay, so why does your yoke suck?
What does your yoke suck?
Yeah, there's any number of reasons why your yoke sucks. And there's probably a variety of carry-over exercises that would benefit your yoke performance. It is a very common philosophy in weightlifting and powerlifting to come up with special exercises that address specific parts of a bigger compound movement to help improve that part. If you can clearly identify a weakness and simply focus on it, that is the easiest way to get better at a lift for sure.
Yeah.
So the things that really, there's only a couple of phases or a couple of things that you can do bad or wrong or whatever.
Suck at the
So
yoke.
yeah, the first one would be the pick.
Great. So the pick, if you can't pick it up, you're not going to move it, inherently speaking. So your pick sucks. Some things you could do would be like heavy partial squats, like partial range of motion squats, or even just yoke pick and holds. that is a lot more disgusting than maybe it sounds, but it is very effective.
Want to know a secret? Isometric exercise is a lot less CNS intensive than like moving exercise.
Yeah.
And so you can really pick a heavy yoke and hold it for a while, and it doesn't hurt too bad. It's great, we were talking earlier about breathing. It's great to put a super maximal yoke on your back and just play with your belt, play with the tension and the pressure. See how long you can kind of keep things stable without your face popping off or your posture coming down. And that's another way to get time under tension, without necessarily running around.
Right.
So I actually had an injury where I couldn't really walk a yoke, and I did nothing but like heavy picks basically. And I did really well on the show, having basically not trained the yoke for like 3 months. Those are ways to improve your pick.
Yeah.
What if you got wobbly legs or wobbly hips? So like this comes down to instability at either the ankle, the knee, or the hip. First things first, I think unilateral exercise inherently requires more stabilization, and thus they are good stability exercises. But in order to be specific to the yoke, they probably need to be weighted in some ways. They need to be heavy and intense. So at the ankle, basically anything where you're on one leg is an ankle stability exercise. But you can always add an additional element by grabbing something like an AirX pad. You'll see those in a physical therapy setting a lot, or like functional training. Anything that's squishy. Go on a jiu-jitsu mat or go out on the grass, like out in the park, like bare feet, and let your foot shift around on that soft surface. Your ankle stability will improve quickly. At the knee, that could be quadricep hamstring imbalance. That could be a lack of mobility at the ankle or the hip. So like when your ankle or your hip isn't moving right, your knee will take the brunt.
Good things would be like Bulgarian split squats.
Yeah, anything that has a lot of knee flexion unilaterally, Bulgarians. And then at the hip, really anything that has a lot of hip flexion. So I would say like a single leg RDL, single leg good morning, box step ups that are one-legged box step ups, things like that can really work. Especially my injury was probably related to like psoas QL balance and so anything where the pelvis shifts up and down or has to unshift up and down can be really helpful for stabilizing the head. Those need to be weighted. It needs to be heavy and hard. You can't be doing like 20 or 30 reps. It needs to be like something that's tough for 5.
Not like your Cosmos.
Yeah, and I think you need to slow down and then demonstrate a lot of stability and control for it to be effective.
And be in for a proper position. I know for a lot of women, anytime they do stability exercises, because women are more likely to have severe anterior pelvic tilt, they do this weird compensatory thing where they just stick their ass out and think it makes like a really nice RDL, when really you're not sort of engaging what you need to engage. So have somebody watch you, have a good coach if you can, or even talk to a physical therapist. There are actually specific physical therapists who offer like online programs and consultations for strength athletes, like Dark Side Strength. They are very legit. They do really good stuff. They work with a lot of high-level lifters. They put out lots of good videos, so you can find the information out there.
If you're not seeking the help of like allied professionals like that, you're probably missing out, because if you're training hard, something is probably out of balance. So you don't have, like she said, you don't have access to a physical therapist, a chiropractor, even a massage therapist or another kind of soft tissue worker, then you're probably missing out, because they'll help you identify problems before they break. Okay, so what about speed?
Speed.
Practice lighter weights. Yeah, go faster. And don't fucking train heavy all the time. That'll give you the opportunity to kind of figure out, stride frequency versus stride length, and the actual stepping patterns you're going to use, how you're going to breathe when they're rattling around, just getting used to the specific factors. If you're training too heavy to go fast, then you don't get much practice at fast.
Right, and I think that's pretty important, because a lot of people will get a yoke on their back in a contest and be like, oh shit, I have so much to think about, and they kind of don't know what to do with their feet. They're triple over themselves. So make it automatic practice.
A lot of that, yeah. And double check your shoes.
Yes, make sure they're really tight.
Yeah, make sure the surface that you're on is the appropriate surface to train on. Those things can make a big difference when it comes to speed. The last one I see is more of a total time or an endurance thing is slippage. Like the yoke is coming down for that. That could be due to postural issues, like exaggerated kyphosis. But it's probably just due to like for lightweight athletes, it's a lack of upper back musculature. There's no shelf to put the bar on, and or a lack of attention to like maintaining like whatever rack you have.
Stay in that position very long. I think that's a huge problem, especially for lighter weight women. You need more traps, bro. You don't have to be on the back knee.
You know, how many really important strongman events don't require like grip and pulling and scapular retraction, you know?
It's almost all of them. So if you're training strongman, you probably already have sort of like a decent back built up.
But if not, rowing related exercises. At Full Circle, we do a lot of seal rows because it's easy to just focus on the actual pulling part. A lot of people like to do bent over like barbell rows and stuff. And if you actually have to stand there in like a static RDL position while you do your set, the limiting factor is probably not your ability to pull. It's like you're bending over endurance.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're really after.
And I think sort of like I mentioned earlier, a big problem for a lot of women is they sort of arch exaggeratedly so, and then just are really poor positions that they shouldn't be in, just to get the row down and the seal row and just prevent all that. I mean, and you get to lay down.
We're talking, yeah. And if you don't, if you've never heard that term, we're talking about doing a barbell row, horizontal plane, like on a bench. So you're just laying on the bench with bars and pull up to your chest. These are too short. Yeah, you're gonna need a special bench. Yeah. Chin-ups. Yeah, chin-ups, traps, paddle traps.
They're kind of important.
Yeah.
You should be getting a lot of that work in anyways.
Did your bro chop your back?
Yeah. Have a romantic moment. It's really nice.
Are you keeping your elbows up? Are you trying hard? And finally, did you place the bar too low?
Yes. If you place it too low, it's going to slip off the back.
It's a matter of fact. It's a thing that happens.
Yeah, it is what happens.
Thus concludes our specialty exercises. I think that if you really got a long way to go on the yoke, what I would say is the bread and butter is going to be lots of sets with light weights, really focusing on posture, position, and speed. And then maybe a supplementary exercise or two. Something specific, like maybe picking a heavy yoke and holding it, or maybe doing some special practices with like how you start, your first few works.
Yeah, and practicing those places where you often.
And then maybe something just a little bit more GDP related, like if upper back strength is your problem, adding some extra rows or chin-ups to your like weekly program, so that you can build that up over time. If you've got that sort of three-pronged approach to the yoke, that's a lot more attention than most folks pay to it. It'll improve rapidly.
It'll carry over nicely to other boarding events as well.
Yeah.
So.
There's a lot of relationship between yoke and like any of the front carries, like Lucifer or Conan's wheel. It's just they're not exactly the same, but
there's carries over there. So you're not just doing something that's so specific that it's just going to be applicable for the yoke. It will definitely assist you in your other strongman endeavors and looking really legit, which is very important.
That's about it, right?
Yeah.
Yokes.
Yay, we love them.
Alright, cool. So, before we go, make sure to like us on Facebook.
And
/
on YouTube.
Strongma'am.
Yeah, 3 A's.
You'll find it.
Yeah, I'll link it.
Yeah. Check us out on YouTube. Leave comments wherever the hell you want. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because that's really the impetus to all of our programs is what people are asking. Gabby, and so just tell us, and we'll try to have something useful to say about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Cool.
Right.
Sweet. We did it. And the camera didn't die. It's a PR.
Yeah, this is really a battery PR.
Yeah, it really is. The battery did its